safe nations, zero emission economies. With the rapid production of sustainable villages in paradise for repatriating Indigenous peoples back into their beautiful, pristine wilderness environments from all around the world, as we rapidly mass produce for them beautiful upmarket buildings and whole communities and deliver to site and build very quick. Also, we have the Sustainable Cities in Paradise, which took us 30 years to develop all the key technologies to bring to market for rollout throughout the frontier and emerging markets. And our timing now is perfect. So, we also have no automobiles and also no fossil fuels. How's that for a future for mankind? My name is Hemi Newman. I'm an Indigenous sustainability specialist and I'm from the Ngāti Kahungunu Maori tribe from Hawke's Bay in New Zealand with the rising of the sun. And so I'm very familiar with what a paradise is because I was born into one and we lived in one. So, you know, as a young boy, I visualised the living on my own paradise island with my own village, with my own homes, because we had lived in a brand new home back in those days, and it was a freehold, and it was wonderful. So I visualised in my little mind as a little 5-year-old in 1962, my own sustainable village on my own island, which was a safe island. And you know, the mind of a little child, I visualised the waterfall and running a pipe down the side of it and a little turbine at the bottom to generate the electricity for my village. And in the village was all these beautiful people that were loving and kind and generous, like our Maori people were like when I was a little child. So that was the village. It was a beautiful village, mainly because of the people that were living within it. There were no violent people. There were no, and in our Maori community when I was little, we never had any solo mums. We never had any foster families, step families, grandparent families, gang families, right? None of those. We never had them. It didn't exist. We never had young women who were pregnant without a husband to raise their children. It was a sustainable society, socially sustainable, but also we did the contracts for the corporations, or not like Watties Foods. We were the harvesters of the crops because they didn't have tractors in 1962. Us Maoris, we went out the whole community, we worked out in rows, went up the paddocks and harvested all the potatoes, all the asparagus, beans, peas, you name it. We were it until they brought out tractors, and then we were no longer economically sustainable. Now today what we're doing is the same. It's Indigenous sustainability projects, with the economic side being the big tech companies from Silicon Valley, Wall Street bankers, and also the African nations that are interested in us setting up micronations within their nations to bring massive technology and finance transfer into their nations, which can only be done if we have a micronation, because there's no way you bankers from America are going to hand over billions of dollars to an African nation, right? But you will hand it to us if we have the micronation with our own sovereignty, like we have here in Western Australia. 500 miles up the top past Geraldton, there is a micronation called the Hutt Valley Province. They have their own sovereignty. They're not under the Australian sovereignty. Right? When you have your own sovereignty, you control all the finances, the banking, you can get rid of the corruption and the greed and the corruption and the police. Here in Australia, 95% of the drug trafficking is controlled by the government. When you have a Indigenous green corporation with the sovereignty, you don't have those problems, okay? And that's why I've said to the African leaders, no, you've got to give us the micronation, because there's no way anyone's going to hand you billions of dollars for infrastructure development. And we will come in, we will build, and we'll build for your villages that have the resources underground, because we know from the satellite technology how much resources is under the ground with the nuclear photography. And we just go to those indigenous villages and say, listen, we will build you an indigenous sustainable village on tech, free, in exchange for your minerals, right? And this big massive land on the side of your rivers or on your islands, there's your deal. So they're happy to do business, but they're happy to do business with us because we are indigenous, we know sustainability, unlike any white fellas on this planet. There's no white fella on this planet that can walk this desert and read a footprint. Your best sustainability experts and specialists are indigenous. We know Mother Nature. We live it. We're an extension of it. We know social sustainability. Social sustainability is the key to sustainability. You need social, cultural, ecological, economic. If you can't get the social side right, you will never get the cultural, ecological, or economic. So we are the leaders in the areas of sustainability. And when you have finished watching this presentation, you will know that I speak the truth. But the thing that drives us from the chairman of our Sustainable Nation Building Industry Group, right down to the janitor in one of our precincts or one of our homeless people on the streets who we're recruiting for work once they go through our happy training curriculum, right throughout the entire organisation from top to bottom, we are driven by a wonderful vision. And the vision I want to share with you right now. There it is. It's to create a happy future for our children and for our children's children, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, from all walks of life without prejudice. So that means your children from Wall Street to the children that are impoverished living on the streets, to all of the religions, Muslim, Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Catholics, we don't care. Children are children. We have no prejudice. Your socio-economic standing, it doesn't matter to us. Our vision is for all children. And that's why it works so well. That's why we have support from so many different organisations. There's your vision, all right? Now, here we have a little Maori girl. Here we have some Aboriginal girls. And when you hear these girls sing, you'll be amazed. Also, we have here a little girl from India, from a slum. And on the right here, we have children from different socio-economic groups. And as you can see, they're all happy children. So, but out of that, you asked me the question, out of all those children you see there on the screen, which one do you think is going to be the most valuable? I tell you, it's the little girl from the slum. Because she is the one that's going to appreciate what we're going to show you here today, and she will be the most loyal and the most grateful. All right, so we recommend for everyone to follow us on our Sustainable Cities in Paradise YouTube channel. In actual fact, we're going to switch that. You can follow us on Bruce's channel, right? And the purpose of this presentation here, all right, is to, see there? It was a bit of a rushed video production I did to beat the 2020 domino stock market crash. That video went out there. I've now taken it offline, and now we're doing the proper one. You'll be able to capitalise on what we are doing for you bankers from Wall Street and Silicon Valley technology giants. There is a unique buying opportunity here for you. And what we're talking about here is that it's a $1 trillion business opportunity, all right, with a USD $400 billion upfront payment. You pay us that, okay, and we'll provide you with 10 sustainable cities in paradise that I'm going to show you here. You'll be very impressed, right? So that works out at $80 billion each, doesn't it? Right? Now, what you can do from there is you can sell 5 of them for double the price. And I'm telling you double the price, and you yourselves know there is a civil war about to break out in America, according to Harry Dent. And Harry Dent quoted that 2 years ago, he told us. Now, we're seeing all you Americans buying all the weapons to shoot each other, right? Because you're crazy. So you've got a civil war coming. Once that civil war starts, your families, your technology developers, your executives, your personnel are all at threat. Very, very dangerous civil wars. At least in a real war, you can see the uniforms. In a civil war, you can't see who's going to put the bullet in you. So really, you Americans, you're going to need to relocate out of America to keep your families alive and to protect your valuable human capital, or what we call social capital. All right, so what's going to happen is there'll be a big queue of you all wanting to get out. But for the first lot of you that get in with us, give us the upfront payment, right, at $40 billion each, and then you inhabit 5 of them, get all your people out into these safe nations, inhabit 5, sell the other 5 for double the price, 80 billion. You just broke even, didn't you? Because that's 400 billion you just sold those for, which is what you paid for us in the upfront payment. That's pretty sustainable, isn't it? So if you do that, that's a very good return on investment. And this is without digging a hole, by the way, right? Without digging a hole. You know how it works. So, and before any of our construction begins, right? And then what you can do, and you know you can do this, right? If you're making $40 billion profit in just a few months, $40 billion profit per sustainable city, $400 billion profit. Will your shareholders invest with you if you do launch a $1.2 trillion IPO? That's pretty easy to answer, isn't it? All right. Why do I know how this works? Here in Australia, this is Perth is the mining capital of the world. Mining capital of the world. It started with 2, magazines, mining magazines, and I knew the owner of the first one who built it, and he then started running conferences here in Perth for the mining companies, and then in came all you guys from Wall Street, and came all the big technology developers, the dump trucks, and you name them, they all rocked up here at the Burswood to display their mining technologies. So that was one of the things he did. And then the magazines in those days, this was around about 1995, 98, and the magazines were $40 each, right? But beautiful gloss magazines. But it was big business, and it set Perth up as the mining capital of the world, which it still is. Now, the other magazine was owned by another company, and the editor was a friend of mine. He rang me one day and he said to me, "Hey, did you know that there's a company I had to go and interview today, and it's a mining company, and they list on the stock markets for selling all the silver, mining the silver." He said, "But did you know they haven't yet dug a hole?" I said, "How does that work?" He says, "Well, easy. They've only got 5 people up there at the mine site, and there's a few dongas they stay in. One is the manager, 2 are the geologists, and 2 are labourers. And what they do is the geologists find that, there's a big vein over here worth $100 million, right? Put on the stock markets, right? They haven't dug a hole yet, but they raise $100 million, and then the next time here's another vein over here, right? And put on the stock market, raise another $100 million, they haven't dug a hole. And come on, guys, you know how it works. It's the potential that everyone's buying. So we're going to show you the potential of building rapid mass production of these sustainable villages in paradise and sustainable cities in paradise with an upfront payment. All right? The first one puts the upfront payment, you'll be in big business. So that's how it works, giving you just a little bit of insight. And as I say, you make the money before the construction. So our future, as I say, is for the children. And how do you create a happy future for children in a world that we live in? Right? We have the 5 greatest threats to humanity right now, and you know it. Number 5 is climate change. I was on the climate change march, 2 of them just recently, and we have this global warming hysteria. All right, climate change, as you can see there, is number 5. Don't kid yourselves. Right? It's number 5. It will be rectified because the underworld have now watched, that we're connected to, they're my rallies actually, but I'm not involved with them. I do not have a criminal record. I do not break the law. But they have what we call a coalition of invisible and indestructible criminal organisations operating through the dark web. And when they got the copy or the link to Rosa Keogh video on YouTube talking about Agenda 21. When they watched that video, they were fuming. When they watched the Zeitgeist videos, they were fuming. When they listened to our audio podcast, The Truth About 9/11, and found out who was behind it, and the debenture trading bank that you guys in Wall Street know about. Come on, I know too. So when they found out what you guys in Wall Street were doing, they were furious. And this one world government, militarised, corporate controlled, one world government, you guys think you're going to depopulate humanity, not according to the Maori triads behind this underworld. And what they're doing is they have already positioned all the drop saws beside all the railway lines across Australia that carry, or that have gone through a sacred site, which is virtually most of your BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, FMG, and also Hancock Prospecting. You've all gone through the sacred sites. The sacred sites are going to be cleared of the railway tracks, right? And there's a video production we can get you to watch to prove that it is going to happen. Now, the other thing is they're also cutting up the railway tracks that carry coal all around the planet to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45%. That's going to impact on America. It's going to impact on China and India, on the production of steel, aluminium. They're not going to be able to produce it without the coal because 30% of the world's coal comes from Australia. No coal exports from Australia. There goes those two economies. They're going to crash, right? There's no choice. The blast furnaces, the open hearth furnaces will have no coal to process. Now, they're also cutting up the railway tracks that carry the 35 minerals that Donald Trump has foolishly put on your government website under the Critical Minerals Register. Check it out. He was a fool to do that because it enabled the Maori triads to identify what those minerals are. They are now cutting up every railway track on the planet that carries those 35 minerals. You are in big trouble. No minerals, there goes 8.8% of your GDP in America. No minerals means that none of your manufacturing plants are going to be operating. This is the impact of them watching the Rosa Keogh Agenda 21 video. So, you need to seriously think about America and your economy without any minerals. The drop saws have been positioned. They were positioned 13 months ago. They're covered in shrouds, cannot be picked up by the military. I'm ex-military. They cannot be picked up by satellite technologies. When they start derailing all those trains and they're uploaded to YouTube, all your investors are going to pull out of every darn mining company on the planet. So you seriously need to think about what I'm saying. The reason that they're doing this is that they love our vision for the children and they know it's impossible to attain it with the 1,600 new coal-fired power stations being built in the next 3 years, when the summary statement for the COP23 climate change conference said, right? The final summary statement said, we have failed to stabilise our climate system. We must now embrace for catastrophic climate change. You tell that to the Maori triads. And their response was, cut up every railway track on the planet that carries coal. That's going to create a 43% electricity shortage on a global scale. All right. Now you're going to ask me, how can they possibly cut up so many railway tracks? Well, it's easy. And you see the videos with me and them on our YouTube channel, you'll see a green wall. That green wall was painted by the creator of the dark web, who I introduced to the Maori triads, and they're working together. Now, inside the dark web, the Maori triads only do 3 forms of business, right? It's international drug trafficking, money laundering in big scale, and also financing terrorism against America. Hence the reason they're cutting up all those railway tracks carrying the 35 minerals to stop your 800 military bases from being able to enforce the new one world government. This is how they're doing it. So I'm telling you straight, the Maori nation will not put up with a threat against our Maori children, or neither will all the underworld that's coming in behind them now. And inside the dark web, if you go on to YouTube, Jamie Bartlett, the dark net, the mysterious dark net goes mainstream. In there, that video will show how the drugs are moved through the dark web. And among all those customers are thousands upon thousands of these dirty, treacherous crack and coke junkies. They will do anything for their next fix. And what the Maori triads have offered them is 6 months free meth, high grade, uncut, cut up a railway track and derail a train. Load the video to YouTube with the GPS coordinates so the Maori triads can check with satellite technologies if that train was actually derailed, right? If it was derailed and it's scattered all over the wilderness, they will then pay that junkie, that treacherous junkie, and we don't like him, we hate him. They will pay that treacherous junkie the 6 months meth or $9,000 in cash within 20 minutes through the dark web, all right? 20 minutes. If you got a crack and coke junkie making $9,000 in 20 minutes, how many other crack and coke junkies, how many of them are going to go out there and cut up railway tracks owned by BHP Billiton, Rio Tinto, and particularly the indigenous peoples where they know that the railway tracks have gone through their indigenous sacred sites? That was a big, big mistake. It's got to come back on you. So, and also the coal. They don't want, and they don't see the sense of building 1,600 new coal-fired power stations if we're on the verge of catastrophic climate change. Hence the reason they're cutting up every rail track on the planet that carries coal. So you've got to ask yourself, you guys in Wall Street, where's that going to leave you? I don't need to answer that, do I? Because you're going to have brownouts and you're going to have blackouts because you were foolish enough and ignorant enough not to transform your economies into low carbon economies. And now it's coming back on you because all this action with the railway tracks is going to start very soon. That is what's going to collapse and drop the stock markets. Now, the reason for this video production is to convince you to invest with us because you're going to have no minerals in America, right? Crack and coke junkies, man. I've used that stuff. And when you're on it, you talk like nobody's business and you do anything. That's the way it works. That's why they're using them. They don't need a military force. They don't need to hire Al-Qaeda. The Maoris are clever. We're the greatest fighting nation on the world. We're the only nation to conquer the British Empire. They signed a peace treaty. And in the end, we got all our lands back. So I'm telling you for your own sake, listen to me. Think about what I'm saying. Assess your critical risks for your business. And also, more importantly, what is the Civil War going to do in America? Will it be amplified when you've got no minerals coming into America? Or even the thought of no minerals once those railway tracks are cut up and they're uploaded? Right? There's going to be massive geopolitical chaos all around the world. And there's no way you can find out who the Maori triads are. They've been invisible and indestructible for 50 years. Nothing's ever been written about them. But you can check on the Truth About 9/11 podcast how they originated. So very clever, very dangerous. But at the moment, all the underworld are jumping to their side because of that depopulation, the threat that you Americans pose to every criminal organisation on the planet with your one world, militarised, corporate-controlled government. New World Order. So you need to think about this. And let me continue, all right? Climate change, it's only number 5. Number 5. So don't kid yourself thinking that that is a big threat, because once all the coal or the railway tracks are cut up that carry coal, there goes 45% of your greenhouse gas emissions. Boom, just like that. So we don't need to worry about climate change, do we? Cut up those railway tracks, stabilises the climate system. The climate system will stabilise itself if there's no more greenhouse gas emissions being produced. Now, I'm an aircraft engineer. I was trained in the Royal New Zealand Air Force, aeronautical engineer. I'm also a qualified automotive engineer. Engineers, we only do 2 things, right? You have these people developing cities, they're clowns, they're called town planners, but they're not engineers. I'm an engineer that engineered the sustainable villages in paradise and the sustainable cities in paradise. Engineers only do 2 things. 1, we prevent things from going wrong. So your automobile, we prevent, right, things crashing, maintaining the brakes and everything, right? All these things, prevention. Same on aircraft that I worked on. That's the first thing we do. The other thing that we do is we cure the cause of the problem. What is the cause of the problem for climate change? Isn't it the coal? Isn't it the coal that you finance from extraction right through to combustion? That's being solved in the next month when all those railway tracks start getting cut up. And you think about it, if a junkie makes $9,000 from 15 minutes cutting up one side of the railway tracks so the train swerves off to the side, that's good money at $9,000. He don't need to go and rob his family and his friends, right, or roll someone in the streets. He just needs to go out in the wilderness, cut up a railway track. There you go, at $9,000, within 20 minutes, and the married triads, boom, straight in. They don't care, they got heaps of money. And that's the way it works. So, figure it out for yourself. Climate change is only number 5. We're not worried about it. Cure the cause of the problem. Problem is coal-fired power production, right? Cut the railway tracks up, problem solved, reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 45%, and the ecosystems will automatically rejuvenate it, because that's how our grand creator designed it to do. So, cure the cause of the problem. And bankrupt all the banks and everybody else in the process. Reduce consumption, because if all the mining companies have gone bankrupt in Australia because they've got no mines, they can't get their resources exported, they're out of business. Reduce consumption. So there you go, reduce consumption. Professor Peter Newman's #1 in the world, sustainability expert. He asked me year before last, he said, can you write me a paper on how to stabilise our climate system and reduce consumption? There you go, I've just given you the answers, right? And it's my relatives that control the underworld who are solving that problem for us, and it's got nothing to do with me. So climate change, number 5. I only need 2 of these graphics to show you what you Americans have done to our planet, and now it's coming back upon you. When Hurricane Irma happened, $223 billion worth of damage, right? That's what it did. And at the same time, your lot, you put the big focus on Irma, but at the same time, we're smart, we checked out, there were 5 other hurricanes, category 5 up your coastline. And if they hadn't put the focus on Irma, everybody would have seen that you're getting hit by all the hurricanes and pulled their money out of America. We're exposing that. So, you created it, you're now reaping it. And this civil war is going to kill you. It's going to kill your relatives. It's going to kill your friends, because according to Harry Dent, America is divided by 3 in your crazy families. They're not even talking to each other because they're divided by 3. When you have a civil war, I'm ex-military, in a real war, you can see your enemy because they're wearing uniforms, right? In a civil war, you can't. And you've got a lot of weapons over there or start shooting each other. So you seriously need to consider getting out of America with your valuable human capital, or what we call social capital, and the same Jacob Rothschild calls it social capital as well, which, by the way, Jacob says that's more important, that's their greatest investment now for the Rothschilds, over and above infrastructure, energy and everything else. So, and we're going to show you that we're right on the ball with that climate change. So, the next one, the 2020 domino stock market crash. All right, there's thanks to Warren Buffett predicting it wrong, and everybody going, "Oh, what a load of rubbish! It's never going to happen." But Harry Dent never corrected it, never got it wrong, because I saw Harry Dent the year before last, and Harry Dent said back then it was going to happen between November last year and February this year. I saw Harry Dent again just back in November, just gone. Harry also edited my document, my final document on the sustainable cities. He's edited it, and we haven't even corrected it because we've photographed Harry's editing so we can prove that Harry edited it for us, because nobody believes us. So he's edited it, and he didn't have a problem with what we're doing, because you know what he's out like. If you're telling porkies, but he's going to stomp you right in an instant, and you can't buy Harry Dent, and you know that. So the 2020 domino stock market crash, it hasn't happened yet, but it will definitely happen when there's 100 of those train derailments uploaded to YouTube. Think about it. And watch the one we have on our website, on our YouTube channel, Sustainable Cities in Paradise YouTube channel. Check out the BHP runaway train video. That's me talking and exposing that was a lie by the media, and that was the first of the railway tracks cut up. And I said to our institutional investors prior to that, "No, the railway track's getting cut." They said, what a load of rubbish. Never going to happen. When that video came out, they then listened to me, what I taught them about Harry Dent. Harry Dent said, sell up your mansions, put lipstick on the pig, get rid of it, right? And also get your money out of the stock markets, right? This is what Harry's talking about. So they didn't believe me, but once they saw that video and they realised it was the indigenous underworld that actually did it, and as I said to them, you're idiots. You shouldn't have done that. You could have crashed the stock markets, right? But it was done, and it shocked our feng shui-friendly institutional investors, got a shock, which motivated them to sell up and get the hell out of Australia with all their portfolios and everything. And they're safe now. And they had a 13-month head start, but you guys, you're only going to have a 2-week head start, I'm sorry. And you can't stop those tracks being cut up. So the domino stock market crash, Harry predicted it was going to occur because of the financial bubble being so big, but it's actually going to be triggered by 100 train derailments. Think about it, right? I told these Aboriginals that cut that first one up, I said, you could have crashed the stock markets. Thank goodness the Australian politicians and the media are a pack of liars because they covered it up as a runaway train, right? But you check out that video and you'll know they were lying. So, at the end of the day, for $9,000, you can ask any crack and coke junkie, will you cut up a railway track for $9,000? They're going to tell you, oh, you bet I'll do it. I don't care if it puts the Australian economy and crashes it. Don't care. And I said to one of our Maori rappers, I said, hey bro, would you cut up a railway track for 6 months free meth? And he said to me, bro, I'll do it for one shot. Oh, Maori Tribe's going to love you, bro. Right, one shot, $50. 1 day's worth. That's what he was prepared to do. So for $9,000 USD, they'll all do it. So don't kid yourselves if you think, like our feng shui friendly institutional investors thought, it's never going to happen, because it is going to happen. And if you go to the Jehovah's Witnesses website and ask them about the King of the North, who is it? Coming from the rising of the sun. And you'll find that they are the Maori Triads from the Ngāti Kahungunu Maori tribe that I come from the rising of the sun in the east coast of the North Island, Kings of the North, from the rising of the sun from the east. That's them. And it says that they are the ones going to destroy the Anglo-American world empire. How are they doing it? Crack and coke junkies, particularly the ones in here that the Australian government developed by trafficking all the meth into every community and into our schools, into our universities. They pushed it through the underworld, through one of our outlaw motorcycle gangs, distributed it into the remote Aboriginal communities to destroy their communities. Why do I know? I was there when the first lot of meth came into Western Australia, and it was handed to the President of this outlaw motorcycle gang. I was there. I know the nephew who was responsible for distributing it into the remote Aboriginal communities, to destroy their families, to destroy their marriages, to destroy their whole darn communities, so that you fellas could rape and pillage their land, their minerals, and their resources, and now their water. Game's up. They're not handling that anymore. They're Darren behind the Maori triads. They were the ones that cut up the railway tracks, not because of Agenda 21, but because of the human rights abuses. So, we're straight up here, you Americans, Wall Street. You've ruined our planet. You've attacked 70 nations. You financed both sides of the wars. Why do I know this? I know this because of the Debenture Trading Bank. And you know that I know what I'm talking about because they were in communication with me here in Perth as the trade towers were going down. And they told me the 3 computer systems that were in the 2 buildings and the one underneath the Pentagon, and they said that we're using a missile to get that one because it's in a bunker. And I told my friends, this is what's going to happen. There's a missile going under that Pentagon. And it happened, didn't it? How do I know that? Debenture Trading Bank is the bank that financed both sides of the wars, financed by you Jewish wealthy people from all around the world. So, you can't pull the wool over our eyes. We know the big games, and the big games are up. So that's the 2020 domino stock market crash is the fourth greatest threat to humanity. Climate change follows it. But the next one is, and you know it is, global petroleum and food shortages, right? Now you know that 80% of the world's oil is now in Iraq. All the other oil fields are depleted. Not only did we get it from Brian Flay at the World Renewable Energy Congress back in 2000, right? Brian Flay worked it out. But then you invaded Iraq, put in a puppet government, sold off the Iraq oil assets to Halliburton, owned by Dick Cheney, who set the war up so that you Americans could control 80% of the world's oil, which you do right now. Which is why I developed Sustainable Cities in Paradise. No fossil fuels, no automobiles. So we don't need your Iraq oil. But the global petroleum and food shortages, the price, when you have a $3 trillion debt mountain in your petroleum industry, Harry Dent says that the price of the domino stock market crash is going to send 2 out of 3 people employed worldwide are going to end up on the dole. Also, the oil price is going to go down to around $10 a barrel. You yourselves know what that is going to create. At $10 a barrel with a $3 trillion debt mountain, you are all bankrupt, right? If it's $52 for shale, right, to get your oil, or your offshore drilling at $54 a barrel, or fracking at $52 a barrel, how are you going to make a profit at $10 a barrel? You're not going to. It's impossible. Not with a $3 trillion debt mountain, right? So, looking at the petroleum crisis with 6,000 products manufactured from petroleum, what's going to happen to all the industries? So the scarcity, you're going to go bankrupt. The scarcity of oil is going to put up the price at the pump. It's going to be 5 to 10 times the price at the pump. If we're spending $40 a week, we're looking at $200 to $400 a week just for petrol to get the children to school, to go to the shops or whatever. People are not going to have it, right? Now, automatically, and I don't need to tell you about this, is that if the price of fuel goes up at the pump, so does the price of food automatically, because the farmers have to pay more for the petrol to go up and down the fields to get the product, their produce to market, and right along the supply chain, every mile you go where petroleum is used ups the price of the end product, which is the food. So, skyrocketing food prices. So if you're looking at $100 today buying food, you could be looking at $500 to $1,000 a week for food. If people are bankrupt, if they're homeless, they are going to kill for food. That's just the way it is. Have a look at the history books. Have a look at what happened in Jerusalem when they got surrounded by the Romans. They ate the children. History tells the future. What was the biggest problem in 1929? The farmers weren't able to produce food. It was food starvation. And you boys in Wall Street were lining up on the top of the buildings to jump off because you lost all your money. Harry Dent says that was a 30% share market wipeout, but this one, 2020 domino stock market crash, is an 80% share market wipeout. You got 100 billion when those railway tracks, those train derailments are uploaded to YouTube. Kiss goodbye to 80 billion. You got left with 20 to run your organisation. Figure it out. So, here we have global petroleum and food shortages. You can expect a skyrocketing crime and violence and drug use. Now, in New Zealand, it's quite a classic, New Zealand. What's happening over there is the price of petrol is pretty high. So you know what our crack and coke junkies are doing over there? They're stealing petrol and giving it to the drug dealers, and the drug dealers are making far more profit from selling the petrol than getting money. Now, if the price of petrol goes up to 5 to 10 times the cost it is today, well, a crack and coke junkie would normally have to, just climb underneath and you whack a hole into the fuel tank with a hammer and a chisel, because I've done it, and you drain the tank. Right, well, today they have to drain 6 tanks to cover 10 days of meth. Right? End of this year, they'll only have to drain one tank. Right? And guess whose cars they're going to target to drain those tanks? I mean, you guys with flash cards, you're going to have the full tanks. So you're going to get an increase in the number of crack and coke junkies because they'll be using the petrol to finance their drugs. And a lot of homeless people today, we're doing research, homeless people use meth because it does actually give them at least some happiness in the terrible state they live in. Right, so I won't go into that. Now, so you've got climate change, the 2020 domino stock market crash. Number 3, global petroleum food shortages. Number 2, and this is one of the worst ones a lot, is right there. United Nations Agenda 21, which is uniting the indigenous peoples all around the world. It's uniting the underworld because there's no way that they are going to stand by and let you Americans enforce the United Nations Agenda 21 with your New World Order and your corporate-controlled, militarised one world government with your 800 military bases spread all around the world. How does the Maori Nation take you out? The Maori triads, they take down your economy. They cut up all the railway tracks carrying those 33 minerals. Now you know that the Chinese cut supply of your critical minerals about 6 months ago with the trade war. And that was 50% of your critical minerals. So Trump came over here to Australia, made a big shout that, we need you to increase your supply of these critical minerals because China's cut us out. Unfortunately, Trump didn't realise that all the drop saws have actually been positioned beside the railway tracks ready to cut them up. So if the other 50 or 40 or so percent are here in Australia with those critical minerals, well then the crack and coke junkies don't need to cut up all the railway tracks throughout Africa or the rest of the world, just all the ones in Australia. That's enough to bankrupt America. Name of the game, bankrupt America, get the Americans shooting Americans instead of shooting the other 70 nations they've been killing for the last 100 years. Different ball game, isn't it? So the evil that you've done to the rest of the world is about to come back on you. Just like climate change, it's come back on you. And it's what's happening. So you probably don't like what I'm saying or the way I'm saying it, but this is the truth and we're giving it to you. We don't have to put up with it because we have a beautiful vision for our children and for our children's children, including yours, because we don't have any form of prejudice, right? So the United Nations are in for big trouble. They're going to be cutting up all those railway tracks and the NBN cable in those 179 countries that are driving Agenda 21. Also, for the 68 nations that are building those 1,600 new coal-fired power stations, according to Coal Watch, they can kiss goodbye to all their railway stations, railway lines. They can kiss goodbye to all of their NBN cables where they come ashore. Here in Australia, it comes ashore in Western Australia and was rolled out right across Australia. Why do I know this? Because the deal to put all the ISPs onto the optic fibre network cable was done in my corporate office, and if you want to check this out, it was Steve Brown who got the contract to hook up Telstra and all the big ISPs. So our Indigenous brothers know where that cable is coming ashore, running across Australia. If they cut that cable up where it comes ashore, you're out of business, right? And those 68 nations that are building those coal-fired power stations, you're not going to be able to build them anyway because your railway tracks are getting cut up. The other thing is, if you do intend to try and build them, they're going to cut your NBN cable up where it comes ashore. So there you go. That's the choice that you have. United Nations Agenda 21 have now got a lot of very, very dangerous organisations coming up against them. And here's your biggest threat. It is not climate change. The biggest threat to humanity is mass population displacement there. All right, as the populations are going to displace around the world to get away from these viruses, to get away from, water shortages, food shortages, crime, violence that escalates, civil wars, you name it, it's going to happen. But when they displace out into the wilderness areas. They're going to eat us Indigenous peoples out of all our food, especially the Asians. They eat everything. They cleaned out our reefs in New Zealand. So the mass population displacement is the biggest threat to humanity. If we got Perth here, if we have 100,000 people come into Perth tomorrow, how does our sewage systems handle it? Right? 1/3 of our sewage systems is actually full of pills that haven't digested through the body. So you only got 2/3 left. You've got a whole lot of other people coming, 100,000 people tomorrow. We're in trouble. Housing. How do we supply another 100,000 houses? How do we supply the additional water? Everything else they're going to need and consume. And those who are unemployed, how are we going to feed them? Mass population displacement is going to be the greatest threat to humanity. If you can't stop them displacing into your nations, you have got a serious problem. If they're displacing internally within your nation, from city to city, your infrastructure wasn't designed to handle a sudden overload. And with it, you're going to get the tent cities, refugees, you're going to get an amazing amount of crime and violence. What is the solution? Safe nations. Safe nations. With our own sovereignty, without the politicians. Right? So, have a look here. Mass population displacement. This is what climate change does when it floods the cities in India, right? And you've got these massive populations displaced, you've got floating sewage there, the sewage has come up, all your underground infrastructure, electricity, water, it's all polluted, the water's polluted, your electricity's gone, anything underground, your optic fibre network, it's all stuffed. So you end up with a lot of people on the move. And when you add to that, these viruses, you add to that water shortages, food shortages, crime, violence, or civil wars, the populations will displace. All right, so there you have it. When it comes to business, you must be able to identify the problems that are coming, and then you provide the solutions. So what are the solutions to these 5 greatest threats to humanity? The solutions, my friends, are the safe nations. The development of micronations, right? Here in Western Australia, as I said, we have the Hutt Valley province, and their king died about 6 months ago, so it hit the front page of the newspaper. But they have their own sovereignty, they have their own financial system, they don't pay tax like we have to in the rest of Australia. They're their own nation. There's about 100 micronations around the world. So we're able to go into Zambia or Uganda or different African nations and say, give us our own micronation right up all that wilderness area on both sides of that beautiful river you have there. We use the river as the main infrastructure, right? And we build coming off the river. So the micronations, we will have our own sovereignty, as I say, the Hutt River province. And when you have your own sovereignty, then you don't have the corruption, right? You don't have the police supplying 95%, controlling the Australian drug trafficking is controlled 95% by the government here, right? Here in Perth, you know how long it takes to score some meth in the streets? 7 minutes. How's that for a nation? Why? Because we have the highest number of millionaires per head of population. We're a wealthy city. And in this wealthy city, it's the target for every drug cartel on the planet. Why do I know? Because of my rallies, right? And we have 16 international cartels trying to get into Perth here, but they're held off by the SAS, the anti-terrorism units, the drug squads, police, TRG units, all that. All the government organisations are keeping them out of Australia so that they can keep control of the drug distribution and through the schools as well. But that's another video, we cover all that. So with the migration though, you can clean that up because you don't have any politicians, right? The 5 most corrupt organisations on the planet, according to the 2013 Global Corruption Index, number 1 is, guess who? Donald Trump and his mates, politicians, right? Number 2, police. Number 3, the judiciary. Number 4, the legislature. And number 5, government officials. Where does it say gangs? Where does it say the underworld? Where does it say the criminals on the streets? No, it doesn't. Your biggest criminals are at the top. And on Wall Street, by the way. So there you have it. But in a micronation, you can clean that up if the micronation is controlled by an indigenous green corporation, which is what we are, which is totally transparent. So we are able to enforce our own laws. You don't need 600 laws like we got. You only need a common culture based on decency, right? The community decides what is decent and what's not decent. If you're not decent, out you go, because they're private cities. Now, our main industry, though, for what we're doing, the Safe Nations, is the development of social capital. And as you know from RIT Capital Investments, the Rothschilds group, Jacob Rothschild said last year, their biggest investment today is social capital. We are going to show you right here how to develop social capital as our main industry in our micronations. Because we use engineered transmigration, right? And that is the rapid mass production of, as I said in the beginning, sustainable villages in paradise and sustainable cities in paradise. And these will be the ultimate safe lifestyle destinations. No crooked politicians, no crooked cops, no crooked judges, they're all out. And also, no criminals can get into these precincts because they're privately owned, right? Safe nations, right? And what we have, first of all, is our sustainable cities in paradise. And by the way, this is a top secret project. That's why you haven't heard anything about it. Our chairman, this is not me, the chairman of our Sustainable Nation Building Industry Steering Group said to me 6 months ago, make us invisible. Get us the hell off social media. And that's what we are. You won't find anything about any of us, about our group of companies. You can't find us, right? We're following the same system that the Maori triads use, invisible and indestructible. If you can't find those of the steering group, you can't send in your assassins, right? Or your economic hitmen. You got no one to hit because you don't know who they are. I'm the only one that you can possibly strike. The moment you strike me, all the railway tracks get cut up straight away. So, and this is why the government here hasn't arrested me. They have seized my corporate bank accounts 3 times this year, and I sort of, yeah, all right, yeah, we'll take that, and cleaned out our bank accounts. But I let it happen because I can use that as evidence against you lot for the underworld to say, no, they did us in. So it's only right that we use the cryptocurrencies through the dark web to transfer billions of dollars across borders into the African nations that we're negotiating these micronations with. Top secret project. It has to be that way because you're a real cruel bunch in America. Now, with these sustainable cities in paradise, less than a 1% impact on our natural environment. How wonderful is that? Right? That's because we don't use any automobiles and we don't use any fossil fuels. That's pretty different, isn't it? Because considering that all your infrastructure projects around the world that you Americans have created are fossil fuel and automobile-based economies, right? High consumption, fossil fuel and automobile-based economies. And that's not what we do. So what we do here, we've got rid of the fossil fuels, we've got rid of the automobiles. Here's how it works. So first of all, these are what we call transport-orientated developments. They're cities. We start with the offshore transport, all right? And I was in the Air Force and we had these flying boats. These flying boats, you can land in a lagoon, you can land in a river, you can land in a lake, which means we do not need $1 billion airport like we got here in Perth. And we don't want those rotten jetty aircraft coming into our precincts with all the people with diseases coming with them, pedophiles, criminals, thieves, and people with bad attitudes won't get in, and they won't be coming in because we don't allow tourism. But what we do is we just need these aircraft to land on the estuaries and bring people in from the air. When you build airports, you're also displacing the bush. We don't displace the bush. The other thing we're using is the high-speed ships. They're made here in Perth. They've got a dual hull there. They lift out of the water. They aquaplane. Right, they're catamarans. So these catamarans can go through the lagoons, and then what we do is we simply say there's an island paradise there, and with our satellite nuclear photography, it shows under that island, this island here, it shows under the island that there's an aquifer of water that can last us the next 100 years. So then we say, right, put in a jetty. So put a jetty in, right, in a lagoon, because these high-speed ships can actually go across the top of the water and you just dig out the side of the jetty, they drop into the deep water, right, unload, and then up they go, lift out of the water and they take off again. So do we need a $1 billion deep water port? No, we don't. Yeah, another $1 billion we save, right? So, and it means that we can build these cities anywhere we want as long as there is a lagoon that we can get into. And also those deep water ports do massive displacement of the marine ecosystem. It's tragic. So the onshore transport, we use the monorail systems, and we can then drop the monorail system into the bush, right, into the bush, using heavy lift helicopters, and I'm ex-Air Force. So you know how you guys, with the electricity, high tension power lines and all that up in the mountains, you use the heavy lift helicopters to get those big rigs up there. Well, we're doing the same. So we just go through the bush using high precision GPS and say, hey boys, dig that up. And we're using geopolymer. It sets at full strength in 4 hours. You put the bolts in, drop in, the helicopter comes in, drops in the main structure, pylons, and there you go. And then they just drop in the rest of the monorail without cutting a road in the bush. How good's that? No roads anywhere. So once the monorail system is in place and we put it in a figure-8 formation, moving away from the coastline if it's on an island, or moving away from the sides of the river, right? If we're using the river as the main transport infrastructure, in a figure-8 formation as you see there, coming around, and then we put the compact communities on the actual monorail system, right? And if you want to get to this compact community, you just stay on the monorail until it comes around to that one and then jump off. But most of us Indigenous people, we prefer to walk through the bush. We can't help ourselves. And with the monorail, you can look at all the wildlife and the monkeys and whatever is there as you're travelling through the bush. And being automated, we don't need train drivers. So you come away from the river, away from the coastline, in 2 loops, and then you run adjacent to the coastline or to the river, or you can come in further and do the same. Right? It's compact communities. Compact community is, I'll show you. Right. So we can put on those 2 loops there 6 compact communities, and the compact community like this: 5 10-storey high buildings in a horseshoe formation, and you don't want to go above 10 stories, right? Because it looks ugly in the wilderness. We've got a skyscraper appearing out of nowhere. So we just limit that, and we design it to how the people want it in the community. I prefer lots of balconies, right? Lots of balconies, and with vertical gardens on the actual balconies. Now, when we go in and we do the compact communities, what we do is we bring in the local Indigenous, because this is a joint venture with the local Indigenous peoples. We bring in the Indigenous master bushman and with his people, and we work with our environmental scientists, and we do the environmental impact study. And during that process, it's about the size of a footy oval with the walkable community or the compact community. And what we do is we capture and relocate all wildlife, from lizards to marsupials, animals, relocate them back into another portion of the native forest, and then we put cameras to monitor the little wildlife animal adjusting to their new home environment. And those videos we link through to the primary schools around the planet, and they can watch that little animal. They even give them a name. This is how you pull all the primary schools. Give that little animal a name, and then you can come and visit them if you want as a group. Right? So they follow that little animal, and then for the suspended beehives, we smoke them, relocate them to another part of the forest. How beautiful is that? Less than 1% impact on the natural environment. You do not cut roads. You cut roads, you're bulldozing little wildlife, right? Freeways, highways. You reckon everything, folks. You don't need to. The river costs nothing to build. There's your main infrastructure, transport infrastructure. The ocean, it's sitting there. Transport infrastructure. Save your costs, right? So, as I say, this is the green cities of the future, which is what Ali Saeed called them when he asked me to write him a 25-page document so he could present our sustainable cities in paradise to the World Infrastructure Conference that many of you were probably there in 2017. I sent Ali a 2-page brief on our sustainable cities, and I said, I'll meet you at the World Renewable Energy Congress. Ali Saeed was the Director General of the World Renewable Energy Network, a friend of mine, and he said to me, write me a 25-page document. I'll present it on behalf of your company, behalf of my company. I didn't even need to go, right, to the World Infrastructure Conference. So these sort of people that love what we're doing because they share our beautiful, wonderful vision for the children. If you want children to be happy, put them in an environment like this where nature is still there. You know, this is the best water drainage system in the world. You know, over in Asia there, they spend $1 billion for stormwater drainage for floods. Mate, we don't have to worry about nothing because nature takes care of it. She absorbs the rain and it goes down into the plants and everything, and then into the streams and into the rivers, and if they go into flood, who cares, because it'll come back down again. But they don't need $1 billion infrastructure, and we don't end up with those floods like I showed you in the mass population displacement with the floods in India. So Mother Nature is the best to build in harmony with Mother Nature, you know, build in harmony, relocate the wildlife, do the right thing, then clear foul, recycle, and we go from there and put the buildings up. So as you can see there, we've got 6 compact communities, 12,000 people in this case, but it depends how wide the buildings are and how high you go, how many people you want to put in the community, and whether they have the same culture or whatever. So we build, we walk away. We educate them in harmony in our community, do their happy training curriculum, we'll talk about that another time, and our children know where they're going in life, they have their major goal, they have a 10-point plan to attain it, and they have all their goals set in the 9 different areas of life. Every 12 months they reset them. And by the way, the bulk of we educate the children in the primary schools, hence bringing in the primary schools. We educate them in all areas of sustainability between the ages 6 and 16, so that when they turn 16, that is when we employ them to build and construct these precincts. 16-year-olds, because we've got rid of all the trades. I'll talk about that in a minute. So there we go, safe nations. And as I say, the starting point is we know oil scarcity is coming. We know the fuel costs are going to skyrocket. And remember, we're going into these impoverished low-wage economies like Uganda, particularly throughout Africa, where a bulk of the world's last remaining resources are in Africa. Right, so we look after them and we just say, well, you've got little fossil fuel and automobile infrastructure, which is fantastic, which is great. You don't have autobahns, you don't have freeways, you don't have highways, you don't have big, massive, harbour bridges and all that costly infrastructure, and you don't have all your refineries and your chemical plants destroying your environment and your cities, polluting them, and your coal-fired power stations. We have the solutions to the whole lot, right? Keep those out of your nations, because they're high costs. Also, the problem that we have in these nations in Africa, they don't have any credibility, right? Which of you guys on Wall Street, you bankers on Wall Street, are going to take $50 billion into any of these African nations, and then a new one is voted into power and he takes all your money? Never going to happen, right? But if you have our indigenous green corporations in there with sovereignty, and we're transparent, because my Fortune 500 profiles shows that I'm 100% honest. They're independent. It's 100 questions, which really are just 10 questions written in 10 different ways, where the person lies over here under a particular topic, they pick the truth up over here, and they say, no, he's a liar, right? So you can be the biggest con artist on the planet, you won't get past these profilers. So it's the first thing we do. We look at who's in charge of this organisation and the executive team. What is their Fortune 500 profile? Ethics tests, results, 100% honesty. They're not going to pull porky on you. They're not going to rip off your nation, because they can't sleep, mate. When you're an honest person, you steal something, you can't sleep. It bugs you. But a lot of these politicians, it doesn't bug them at all. They're liars. Right, so total transparency. Also, we have the executive aptitude profile to show where you're weak, where you're strong, traits analysis. We also use the Roger Hamilton's wealth profiling systems to show, myself, I'm a creator profile. If you check this out, I'm the same as Bill Gates, Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs, and Sir Richard Branson. We're all the same. We're the creators. We create new products. We bring them to market, but we don't know how to run business. We're hopeless, because we're too busy in the future as the visionaries to drive. We get to market and we get out of the way, bring in the mechanics who systemize everything very, very well and drive it properly, making sure the company stays financially viable. And then we bring in the deal makers like Mr. Trump that instinctively know how to crack the best deal, where I'll say, look, I want to sell this here for $5 million, Mr. Trump will whisper in my ear, ask him tell him 6, you'll get away with it. The deal makers get us the best deals, all right? And then you give them equity in the companies. So this is the way we do it. And we're asking these politicians, do the same. You do the same. And those bankers in America, they'll be happy to hand the money to us to build your nation. from the ground up. All right? So they have no credibility. There's no way anyone who puts money into there, and a friend of mine is Andrew DeSoulis, he's the advisor to Gina Reinhardt, the richest person in Australia, in the mines, and he says to me, there is no way ever we will ever go into Africa. There you go. Mining capital of the world, the biggest mining company, and the brains behind Gina Reinhardt says there is no way we will ever go into Africa at any coaxing. There you go. So there's no way they can get the money, and you'd have to be an idiot to go in there like China is everywhere in there. But China's going to be bankrupt when they've got no coal for the manufacturing plants. Interesting, isn't it? So if they can't raise the capital for infrastructure development, really they're going to remain as an impoverished nation. And as the world becomes worse and worse, they'll go down the tube. So if they provide us with a micronation, with our own sovereignty, and as I said, that big regional area, give it to us. Now, in building, and as I said to our representative to one of the governments in Africa this morning, I said, listen, tell your government that when we build our sustainable cities and sustainable villages, we need all the supply chains, right? We need the new high-tech manufacturing plants, and we don't want them in the wilderness. You can have them in your nation, and that will provide employment for your people, a good wage, because we personally will make sure you give them a decent wage. We will build beside those precincts, those manufacturing plants, sustainable villages for them to live in. They can walk to work. They've got good housing to live in, right? There's the deal. It reduces your unemployed. It gets the homeless off the streets. It gets people learning and training. It builds your economy. This is what we're bringing to you with the safe nations. And as well as that, the big tech companies and Wall Street will come in, plough heaps of money. Finance and technology transfer in the trillions will bring into your nation to build your nation, to reduce poverty, right? Increase productivity and growth. I'm talking your language, aren't I? So this is a sustainable nation building industry. Give us the micronation, we'll bring the money in, because they're not going to give it to you. All right, that's your starting point, right? So we're going to take, and let's say I'm talking to the president of Zambia, and I say to him, listen, we're going to take your nation through a transition, right, into a safe nation, zero emission economies. And from there, we'll do the rapid mass production of debt-free, zero-emission infrastructure projects, which are what our sustainable cities are. You see, because let's say IBM, and by the way, IBM, I went in to see the IBM here in Perth about 10 years ago, and when they had the headquarters here, and I walked in off the street, because I don't make appointments. I just walk in off the street. So I asked to see the CEO and the directors, and I said to them, listen, we're building these sustainable cities on these islands. What I just showed you there will be on islands. And we need to link them throughout the Pacific with, the optic fibre network or whatever. But we need you to handle that digital infrastructure because we don't know about it. Can you handle it? They said, yes, we can. So we spent half an hour talking, and then the CEO left the room, and he came back 15 minutes later, and he said to me, James, by the way, my name James is English for my name James, but I use the name Hemi because we deal with Indigenous peoples. Hemi is the Maori name for James, so don't get confused. So they said, James, I just talked to one of our top executives in the world headquarters in IBM. He loves what you're doing. He wants to fly out here to Perth tomorrow. Are you available? Champions, picked up straight away on a plane to Perth next day. No mucking around. But I said, listen, I only came to do research. I didn't come to sell our business. We're not ready to roll out. through the frontier and emerging markets. So I said, no, we'll get back to you. Now we're going to get back to them 10 years later. So this is how people react to our sustainable cities in paradise. It's the most wonderful concept with less than a 1% impact on our natural environment, no reliance on fossil fuels, no reliance on automobiles. And we build very, very quick, which I'm going to show you how we do it. And building zero emission, debt-free, zero emission. It's debt-free because you're going to pay us $400 billion up front, right? No debt. We've been paid. And friends of mine, one of them runs one of these lithium hydroxide plants. Two of them are building the new one down in Kwinana, and another one was the CEO of the company that brought all the lithium batteries into Australia. Now, it's good having friends like that, right? So what one of them said was, listen, one of our companies was given $300 billion upfront payment, $300 billion, to secure lithium hydroxide that they manufacture from the lithium ore. $300 billion upfront to secure it. Did they get, in among that $300 billion, 10 sustainable cities to relocate their people? Right? Are their children going to be safe? Are their families going to be safe? Are their technology developers going to be safe? Right? There's no violence in these, and I'll get onto that in a minute. But no, they didn't. For $300 million upfront fee, high risk. So we're saying $400 billion gets you 10 sustainable cities in paradise. And this is what we call engineered transmigration, moving large populations out of the dangerous cities in the future. And we've got to do a concentration, folks, on America. We're really, really concerned about your American people. You have I know you've wrecked the planet. I know you've killed 100 million people in the last 100 years. But we're looking at your children. And it's your children we're interested in. Employing them at age 16 to come to Perth to be further trained in all the different areas of sustainability, and then we move them into the frontier and emerging markets and the rapid mass production of these sustainable villages and sustainable cities in paradise. So we're concerned with the civil war, how many people are going to be killed. You know, we don't hate Americans. We love Americans. But what we do hate is what you did to our planet, what you did in attacking those 70 nations, right? What you're doing with your 800 military bases. They're going to be shut down. They're going to be forced to shut down because your economy is going to be bankrupted with no minerals. So we are concerned about your families who are decent, good-hearted people wanting to get out of America, and we're happy to bring them in with us if they do a happy training curriculum and show us that they are decent people, can work with us, can work with your big tech companies or your service and information-based corporations that we build for. We're happy to work with them, with all of them. So it's called engineered transmigration. We need to build these precincts fast enough to cater for the massive populations that we need to move out of these dangerous towns and cities from all around the world before they get killed. Right? It's a very, very serious problem that's coming. And it's what we call population decentralisation, whereas Agenda 21 is totally the opposite, which is about population herding of the populations into mass population centres called cities, and then clearing out the rural areas, putting all the farmers out of business, taking control of the food production so that you can depopulate humanity. We know the big games, you can't fool us. So it's population decentralisation, which means now getting the decent, good-hearted people and moving them out back into the beautiful, pristine wilderness areas of paradise, all right, into these beautiful precincts, which are upmarket precincts. So the other thing is we're eliminating debt, if you live in these precincts, because they're debt-free, we don't have to charge anyone for electricity, which is all renewables anyway, water, which is free from under the ground. There is no mortgages because we own everything, right? You stay for free. You have what we call a lifetime cradle to grave employment and habitation contract where you stay with us for your entire life. We don't give you a gold watch at when you turn 65 and say, see you later. We keep you there to the day you die, and we pay for your funeral, we pay for the bassinet and the babies that come into our communities. It's all paid by the corporation, you know, with an upfront fee of $400 billion. We don't need to charge anybody in our communities for anything. So it's debt-free, isn't it? It's also debt-free for the nations that we're working in. We build the infrastructure. It's not costing them a cent. We're paying for it. So, you know, the name of the game is to repatriate the indigenous peoples back to their beautiful, pristine wilderness areas in the remote regions like we have in the Philippines. You know, they're beautiful people, but, you know, they've come over here to Australia. They work for, you know, chicken feed for next to nothing. They're sending the money back to their communities because they've got no electricity, they've got no economy. We build the economy, right? Sustainable villages, debt-free. We'll build them for you, and you don't have to worry about anything. Live your culture and enjoy your culture. So repatriating the indigenous peoples is very important, and then relocating the non-indigenous peoples into the sustainable cities in paradise, because there's more of you. We've got to go upwards, which is what we do in the compact communities. Right, so we're able to position our indigenous green corporation at the front end of the next 6 rising global revolutions. I'll talk about that another time. So we're able to gain trillion-dollar finance and technology transfer from the wealthy high-end nations into these impoverished nations, right? And we're taking them through a transition into what we call wealthy and prosperous, low consumption, service and information-based economy. So we don't need all the heavy industries, do we? All right, because we no fossil fuels, remember, no automobiles. Right, so looking at that, and as I said, it's transport-orientated development. Offshore transport, remember what it was? The flying boats. There you go. So we're able to control disease coming into our precincts because there is no tourism or anything like that. These are private cities. You don't come into our cities unless you are a part of our organisation, right? And you're moving from one precinct to another. So also the high-speed catamaran ships doing 40 k's, right? Transporting our people up the rivers or from island to island. And there's no billion-dollar deep water ports. Very costly, very time-consuming, and they wreck everything, right? The ecosystems. So we just put in the jetty, and then we're right. Right, low-cost offshore transport infrastructure, and also they'll be all hydrogen-powered. And as again, no fossil fuels, no automobiles. This is the green cities of the future, which is what Ali Saib called them. As I say, they're transport-orientated, and now look. Looking again at the onshore transportation, the monorail system with the heavy lift helicopters, all right, there's a reason I'm telling you this again, and the circle route figure 8 formation, moving away from the river or from the coastline. No roads, no displacement of wildlife whatsoever, right? So less than 1% impact on the pristine tropical forests, right? A tropical forest. Less than 1% impact. How fantastic is that? So here we go. This is a compact community. All right. Just to show you what we do. The onshore transportation is the monorail system, but the compact communities near the river or near the coastline needs to be at least 15 metres above sea level for rising seawater levels or tsunamis or storm surges. Just keep it safe. 15 metres above sea level. Remember, engineers, we prevent things from happening, going wrong, it will cause the problems. So figure 8 formation, monorail systems, and then you put in the railway system beside the compact community. If you look there, you can see These buildings here will be higher than these buildings on this side. So the buildings on this side will be like the gymnasiums and, you know, other entertainment areas and things. But the accommodation precincts go up and higher because you've got all your views. All right, and again, using the heavy lift helicopters to position these monorails into the right positions. And as I said, the environmental impact studies capture, relocate the wildlife, link to the schools. Now these are what we call walkable communities because there are no roads, right? No roads, you walk everywhere. It's good for humans to walk, otherwise you end up with a whole lot of fat slobs in your communities, and you don't want those. You want them walking. Get off your butts. Go for a walk. And people love to walk through the bush. And that's what I'm saying. With us Indigenous peoples, man, not many of us are going to use the monorail. We're walking through that bush so we can tune into the wilderness and the wildlife and really, really enjoy it. And no one's going to be in a hurry because there are no 8 to 5 jobs here. It's debt free, right? The most anybody going to work maybe 4 to 10 hours a week. You don't need to work. You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay for your food. You don't have to pay for your clothing because we get it all manufactured in China, dirt cheap, and brought here custom made. So there you go. All right, so as you can see, this is very different, isn't it? Now, let's have a look here. This is permaculture. So we use biointensive agriculture, permaculture, organic gardening, animal husbandry, aquaculture, because the fish in the sea are no good because they're polluted. Right, so we need to build the agriculture and we rotate every 7 years, right? So we might take a portion of the bush here, again, capture, relocate the wildlife, then put in all the permaculture gardens and everything else, sustainable agriculture, and then after 7 years we will then regrow it with the native plants, and we will cut another area of the bush which has got all good nutrient rich soils, and we'll use that again. In the next 7 years we'll do the same. All right, so it's working in harmony with our wonderful environment, and so we should. Right? Less than 1% impact on the natural environment. So, and I'm talking about a pristine wilderness environment. You can pick out an island, we'll go in, less than 1% impact. How good is that? And the thing is this, is that I feel sorry for the wildlife, which is what happened when we had these bushfires here in Australia. You know, we lost human lives, but didn't people really feel for those 6 billion wildlife that got roasted? You know, why? Because you're building your coal-fired power stations and you're doing the water harvesting, which is why that actually happened. We've got a video about that. So we got to, start doing things different. Get rid of those fossil fuels and get rid of the automobile industries, and they're going to be bankrupt very soon. Here we go. This is just another example of going from the one loop, going right around in the figure 8 formation. Then you can go adjacent to the river as well. All right. How beautiful is that? Whole cities with less than 1% impact on our beautiful, wonderful, pristine wilderness environment. So the other thing is we put in a helipad over here, right, so that visitors come, we can take them up into the wilderness and pull up beside a beautiful pristine river, pull out a barbie, have a barbie, do a bit of fishing, and then cruise on back in the helicopter. Because remember, there's no roads to get you there. So the helipad is what we need. Over here, so the compact community is the size of a footy oval. And this one here, 1,200 inhabitants per community, depending on the size of the buildings. And then the station complex, so each of the station complexes, not like your metro rail here, these will be lovely, beautiful lounges where you sit on beautiful lounges and you'll watch the Netflix or whatever on the screens, and you can have something to eat, something to drink as you wait for the monorail to come. And you'll know when the monorail's coming anyway, because you use your technologies. Right, comfortable and classy station complex. And then, right, 2 transition loops away from the river or from the ocean with 7,200 inhabitants in those 2 loops just there, right? Minimal land clearing, 100% renewables for the entire city, right? Everything's renewables. How beautiful is that? Off the grid. And then we'll have the auxiliary power units. If, for any example, we did run out of electricity, just start up the auxiliary power units running off hydrogen, right? Because we use the horizontal wind turbines that produce a certain type of electricity, and then we have over here the photovoltaic solar powers. The combination of the 2 types of electricity produces hydrogas, which we use in our generators when we're doing the environmental impact studies. Okay, still again, no fossil fuels. Get rid of that rubbish. There you go. No fossil fuels, no automobiles. Now, the other thing that we use is geopolymer panels. Now, these are alternative cement, all right? The base product is environmentally friendly fly ash. See that there? Right. That's it there. Fly ash. All right? And you can see it on the screen there. That fly ash is where we put our manufacturing plant right beside a coal-fired power station. There's going to be heaps of them that are going to be shut down. And they have about 200 acres of mounds of fly ash, which is the burnt coal. It's just sitting there. They can't get rid of it. They can't dump it in the river. They can't dump it in the landfill. So they pay us to take it away. And the base product here is actually fly ash. And in this case, we've added granite, right? And the geopolymer mix. The geopolymer mix is interesting. So if we were to use Portland cement, that is 5% of the greenhouse gas emissions is from Portland cement that you built. Everything in these traditional cities are made from Portland cement. 5% of greenhouse gas emissions. We do not need that rubbish anymore because we have this, right? Geopolymer. Now, you might ask, what is this geopolymer? My architect was over in Egypt. Him and his best friend were underneath one of the pyramids. And I walk along and my architect goes, "Hey, what's that?" Written on the wall. And his friend who could read hieroglyphics goes, "That's a formula. It's a formula." So my architect said, "Write it down." They wrote it down. They came back to a university in Western Australia and said, "Can you figure this out, what it is?" And they did figure it out, the scientists, and they said, "That's the formula they use to build the pyramids," right? It was the formula, and they used the sand, made it into the blocks, and built the pyramids because the nearest rocks were 400 miles away. And how did they drag those over and then cut them perfectly? They did it. It was made from the geopolymer formula that was on the wall. How good's that? That's what we got, right? Now with that geopolymer formula, in this case here, right, that one here, it was fly ash as the base product that they pay us to take away, and then granite. But we're building a miniature sustainable city in Western Australia, and these are the rocks, right, on the ground. So we crush these rocks, put them in the mix, in the geopolymer mix. Instead of that, here, that one. So what it means, right, and that's a waste product, by the way, and these are the ones I just showed you here coming up. There you go. That's all over the ground where we're building this sustainable city, miniature one. We crush those. Our factory is 30 minutes away from it. Crush those, put it into the mix, and we're bringing that outdoors indoors. How beautiful is that? To indigenous cultures, if we're building up north, they have red sand. We put the red sand into the mix to make the panels. And we're bringing the outdoors in. With indigenous peoples, our Aboriginal people didn't like the houses were built by the government. They kicked all the walls in, right? But if you bring the red sands in, they're not going to kick them in. It's like the outside, right? They love it. So we're bringing the outdoors in. It's how much it costs us. It's on the ground, mate. You don't need to go and buy from Hardy's or anyone else. It's right there. Put it into the mix and then put it into the panels. Now, these are the panels we use, right? They're panels. And we put the wiring and the plumbing into the panels inside the factory complex as we make the panels, right? So the panels go floor to ceiling with the wiring and plumbing in. And this product here is twice as strong as Portland cement. It's light and it's 4 hours full strength, right? 4 hours. Portland cement, 2 hours to get about 95% strength, and then another 2 months to get the 100%. 4 hours full strength. Beautiful thing about this, it doesn't shrink. Because it doesn't shrink, it means we can get absolute precision building. Precision building. And these panels clip together very quickly. So we can have two 16-year-olds unpack the shipping container that we deliver to site with all the panels in. And they just pull all the panels out and clip the buildings together. Very, very easy, very simple. And as I said, the wiring and the plumbing, it's in the panels. In the panels. And in the factory. And also we have couplings. So when we go floor to floor, we just link the electricity couplings and also the wiring couplings go floor to floor. This means that we haven't got all the waste all over the place. And they're light and they're easy to carry, these panels. All right? They're geopolymer panels delivered to site in the shipping containers. All right? And two young boys just unpack the shipping container, clip the panels together, and in 28 days, you have the rapid building and construction completed. And they're fully approved building and construction and safety regulations that we're under the Australian rules, and very, very strict. And these buildings are passive solar design buildings, right? Passive solar design buildings using also all the 100% renewables and an energy management system as well. We also use the composting toilets so that we can take the manure, put it back onto the land. Chinese will put it on the gardens. I don't believe in it. Put it back in the wilderness, mate. That's not a natural thing to do as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, what you got to do is, and this is what my architect said to me, I'm going to get rid of all those darn trades, right? So when he went to Egypt and they came back with that formula, he then realised he could get rid of the trades, right? And we don't have any scaffolders, we don't need them. We use the panels here for the scaffolding as we go floor to floor. And we don't have any bricklayers, right? No bricklayers, because the panels we use for everything, right? For the walls. Now we've got all different finishes, from marble finishes, there's woodlight finishes, you name it, we got it. Even limestone, it looks like limestone. So having the panels, we can have different panels in different rooms, right? Floor to ceiling tiles and everything else different. Custom build. And so that means we don't need any bricklayers, we don't need any plasterers, right? We also don't need any roofing contractors or carpenters. We don't need any ceiling fixers or tilers, right? And two 16-year-olds can construct this beautiful 4-bedroom home, right? And then the electrician and the plumber come in on day 28 to do the final fit out. right? And we train them using virtual reality and augmented reality headsets. So there you go, a house like this. How about that? 28 days. 2 16-year-olds. How good do you think 2 16-year-old boys we pull out of the slums, never had a job in their lives, and we bring them into one of these precincts, back into their Indigenous precincts, and they build a house in 28 days, 2 of them. How good is that? What will that do for their self-esteem and self-worth? To be building a house that would normally take 10 months to 2 years here in Western Australia, and they do it in 28 days. And then our plumber and our electrician come in to do the final fit out with the renewables, solar cut glass, solar glass. We also use laser cut glass to divert sunlight into buildings, and all the different types of renewables, from water purification units, all by solar, right? Lighting, everything. So fantastic. They build it 28 days. Electrician and plumber come in, final fit out, and there we have it. Beautiful rooms, bedrooms for them to live in, upmarket kitchens like we have here, and then we also build the community centre for the Indigenous community as well. Right. Now, how good's that? That we can build at such a rapid speed for the Indigenous peoples that just happen to have the resources that we need under their land that we pick up through the satellite technology. So we give this as a gift to them, and we say, no, that's our gift to you. Can we please have your resources? But you give us Indigenous peoples, we give the gift first, and we ask for the resources later. Look after the children, look after the community, and they will look after you. They do not trust you people from Wall Street. They do not trust anybody with white skin. But because we don't have white skin, because we are transparent with our profiling and everything else, and because we are Indigenous, and because we have less than 1% impact on the environment, and because it's debt-free and it's a gift, they're on our side. We don't have to coerce. We don't have to manipulate, cheat, lie, steal, or steal their darn lands, right? Or do anything nasty. So, you know, and as I say, these are only for Indigenous Sustainable Village in Paradise, these building technology. You can't buy these technologies to build in the city. We will not give them to you, okay? That's it. So forget about it. Don't even think about asking us for them. So, as I say, here we go. There's our concept. Isn't that beautiful? And it's different from what you know today. We have less than a 1% impact on our natural environment. No fossil fuels, no automobiles. Right. And what I'm going to show you next, you're going to find really enlightening, right? Really, really enlightening. Because check that out. Can you see a freeway there? No. No freeways. Can you see a highway there? No highways. What do they cost to build? No autobahns. No suburban roads. Right? There's no multi-storey car parks. Oh, by the way, just for you Silicon Valley technology giants, when I was at Harry Dent's seminar here back in November, just gone, Harry said, this is not good for your businesses, right? This is what Harry said. Harry said, I would rather invest in a multi-storey car park in India than in a Silicon Valley technology giant. That's not good for your business when you've got Harry Dent saying that. So we don't use those. You need to stick with us, because that's very expensive infrastructure that we don't have to pay for. Also, there's no automobiles, so therefore our people don't have any automobile expenses, like buying the darn thing on a loan, paying off the loan in debt, and then paying for the servicing, then paying for, you know, the licensing, and then your personal driver's license, and then you name it, mate, it goes on and on and on. And you know, and I know, that the automobile industry is 30% of the GDP in most of the high-end nations. Get rid of it. save your economy. And this is what we're saying to the African nations. Let us save your economy, save you these billion-dollar expenses that I'm just pointing out here on the screen. And, you know, there's no central business districts like we're here right now in our office in St. George's Terrace with horrible-looking skyscrapers everywhere, high costs infrastructure, slow to build. We don't use any. You don't need any. What people need is a life without going to darn work, because you don't need to, because it's debt-free. No central business districts. And also no stormwater drainage. As I said before, the best stormwater drainage in the world is in nature. So there's another $1 billion saving. Also, no major shopping centres. You don't need those. We just buy and bulk buy for all of our sustainable cities, for everybody, in one bulk buying package of whatever we want to buy from the manufacturers direct. So it's also, we don't need the high-speed railway systems. We've got the one here Peter Newman was responsible for, $1 billion infrastructure. There's another $1 billion we saved, because you can't see one there, can you? Right, so also, there's no tunnel. You can't see any tunnels there. Tunnels are very, very expensive, right? And then also there's no bridges. There's no industrial corridors. They're very expensive. There's no heavy industries. You don't want heavy industries. They pollute, and the trucks pollute. So, no chemical plants. Now this, by the way, this chemical plant, they're just building down in Kwinana. I just got told by one of the hydroxide manufacturers that this chemical plant, they run into an environmental problem just recently. That's really costed them. It set them way back. You don't want chemical plants, because you've got to get rid of the waste and you destroy the environment. No petroleum infrastructure. Can you see a petroleum refinery here? Can you see a pipeline? Can you see any trucks carrying petrol? Can you see any petrol stations? Do you know what it costs for that infrastructure? How long it takes to build it? And when there isn't any petrol at a cheap price, what are you going to do? Right, so petroleum infrastructure, we don't have any. Also, you know, as I said, the refineries, the water, the gas pipelines, they're very, very expensive to build. And who makes the money from it? You guys in Wall Street make it, all the rich make it, and the people make nothing. So can you see a coal-fired power station there? Can you see a nuclear power plant there? Can you see a gas power plant there? No, you don't need that rubbish. You need renewables. New renewables is 24 times more productive than any other industry out there. Why are you building 1,600 new coal-fired power stations at $2 billion to $4 billion when you've got starving people? 68 nations, the underworld are after you, and they are going to totally destroy your nations. And if you are the citizens, you need to start marching on your parliament to stop anything to do with coal-fired power stations, because they will cut your NBN cables up. Crack and cake junkies will do anything, and so will a Maori for $50. So there's no rural road transport corridors into the rural areas. You don't need those. You got your transportation system there. It's called a river. It costs you nothing. Or an ocean, it costs you nothing. Why, you idiots, build your super highways and things so that the rich get richer, the poor stay poorer, because they're going. Urban sprawl is causing them to travel further to use more petroleum. Game's up. We're telling the world. End of urban sprawl. So, no airports, $1 billion airports. And you know what's bizarre? Here in Perth, my friend, Alvin is his name, is in charge of that $1 billion railway going out to the Perth airport. $2 billion? Why would you carry your bags onto a train and off the train to airport when you can catch an Uber for $20? And be dropped off at the door? So a $2 billion infrastructure, I had a shot at him. It's a rip-off. It's not necessary. Can you see one of those in here? Are we ripping off the people? Because a lot of those projects I know, infrastructure projects, you have your phantom companies do the projects, get paid, but never did anything. Right? Game's up. And we don't want to know about it. We don't need to know about it with what we do. Also, we don't need all the costly sewage infrastructure because we're using composting toilets and putting the manure, human waste, back onto the land, right? And we don't have the problem with, 1/3 of the sewage is full up of pills from the baby boomers where it didn't go through the system, the house pills. What a waste of money. If you're eating organic produce and permaculture produce, you don't need that rubbish. So, also, those horrible deep water ports, we don't need those. And we don't need a landfill. There's zero waste. We don't bring in produce, we grow it and eat it fresh from the gardens. And there's also no broadacre farming. We don't need it, right? We don't need it. So we provide quality living, fine apartments. If you are on the streets, homeless right now, you've got no money, you can do a happy training curriculum. It's worth $600 US. But if you let us know and show us that you're on Social Security, or go to your teacher, headmaster, and show that you're from an impoverished family, you get all our training for free. For free, right? You don't have to pay nothing, because the only way you will get out of a slum, a low-income area, is through education. If you never get educated in life skills education, which is what the Happy Training curriculum is about, to help you find your major goal in life, to do a 10-point plan to attain it once you find it, right? So we write it down. We look at what it is, where you believe you can get it. We look at what are the benefits of, say, becoming a surgeon, if that's what a 6-year-old has come up with, their major goal. Right, what are the benefits? I'm going to be happy, I'm going to love cutting up people, right? These are the sort of things the little children tell us, because we only work with 6 to 16-year-olds. We don't give a hoot about anyone over age 16, because we employ them at 16. So the little child, the 6-year-old, will say, yeah, I want to be a surgeon. I reckon I can be a good surgeon, man. Yes, sweet. So, what's your starting point as part of the 10-point plan? I live in a slum, got no money, right? My parents are addicts. That's all right, just write it down, right? Your starting point. I'm only 6, great, write it down. Right? She writes it down. Remember my goal? I was 5 in 1962 when I created everything you've seen here today as a 5-year-old. So don't ever believe that a little child who says they're going to be a surgeon is not going to make it. The little child believes. Why do you believe it? She writes it down. Right, starting point. What's your target date? I don't know. How old are you? 6. Right. So you got to go to primary school, secondary school, you go to 6 years in uni, then you got to do another 6 years before you become a surgeon. Add that all up, you'll know the date, the year, way in the future that you're going to actually be a surgeon. But you know now while you're in the slum. Good, we know where you're going. So she does that. Okay, what are your obstacles, darling? And she says, oh, we got no money. I got no shoes to wear to school, got no food to eat. No worries, we have sponsors that are going to take care of you now that you're graduating. They'll look after you, right? So the child's going to be looked after. And what we say, we go to Royal Perth Hospital, to Fiona Stanley, we say, hey, listen, there's a little girl here. She's only 6, but she wants to be a surgeon. She's got her life planned out right here. And the 10-point plan. So will you, your hospital, will you sponsor her? Tell all your staff, here's a little girl in a slum, got no money, got heaps of challenges, got addict parents, but we're going to pull her out if you all donate towards that little child and her future. Give her the laptop, give her the mobile phones and everything we have. And I said, watch what it does to your hospital when all your staff are following the journey of an underprivileged child in an impoverished nation. Watch what happens, right? And the morale of the hospital goes up because they're following the child's journey. The child gets relocated into a safe suburb straight away when the money comes in. They follow her life as she's going through all her education. And in the 10-point plan, we've written down also what education you need. And then she goes, oh, maths is no good. No, you need biology, science, physics. So she actually chooses the right topics. And you look at a large percentage of children in schools today haven't chosen the right topic because they don't know what they want to be in the future. But our children do from the happy training curriculum. So she knows the extra education, she knows the people and organisations she's got to get involved with all the way on her journey, which includes the RPH Hospital, Fiona Stanley. 10-point plan in order, and then she collects some visuals, and then we give her a headset with VR, and then she can go into the one that shows the human body, and she can go through all the blood vessels and discover all the different organs, and then the hospital can bring her in and let her watch a surgery happening. How beautiful is that? This is the happy training curriculum that we help the children to find their goal in life, and we put them on the right journey to attain it. So we put them into fine apartments when they get employed with us at the age of 16. We use them to build these precincts very, very fast. There's an abundance of quality water and food, right, to survive with. There's no chemicals, there's no GM foods, there's none of that rubbish, there's no pollution. It's straight out of the garden, it's fresh produce. Okay, and they'll have enjoyable work. And the work, by the way, is to do with looking after the community. They don't have to do a 9-to-5 job. We own everything. It's freehold. And a lot of the primary industry, again, will be social capital in doing all the music and the dance creation that we do as well. So in these communities, we have loving people because we have screening processes to only bring in nice, beautiful people. Now, notice up here, you're going to see the young people. We have a huge focus on helping these children and young people to get the right marriage mate who has the same major goal in life, the same interests, they're attracted to each other physically, and they develop a loving relationship. Once that's developed, we teach them how to be faithful and not watch pornography and all that horrible other stuff to ruin the marriage arrangement and ruin the future for the children. So we're developing happy communities, good education systems for the children, and having peace and harmony, just like our brothers and sisters do in Japan. They're beautiful, the Japanese people. It's just a marvellous society, and we have a lot to learn from them. So, and then in the right environment, not a horrible city, but a beautiful, pristine wilderness environment. Quality living, and I've skipped a few here because we don't want people knowing all the secrets we have. So another thing would be bringing in all the sports, so all the water sports, jet skis. This one is the parachute on the back of the boat, and you just parachute up above the top of Perth. It's a lot of fun. And then we have the high-speed boats, canoes, and remember all these will be all free to use, and the helicopters to use for the entertainment, going up the rivers and things. Nature hikes. All right, enjoy the wilderness, right? And special interests as well, whatever your hobbies or whatever you want to do. You know, arts and crafts is important. And name of game is have fun. These are fun cities of the future. Now, we also have the health centres we're putting in with the world-leading advanced health technologies, aroma, steam, rehydration. And these are magnificent. All right, that's this one here. She's jumping on a lymphocyzer. And there's in there, it's like a steam room. It's got all the aromatherapy oils, natural plants that are bubbling in the water and going into the steam. And because they're tense, we can have the sound going through as we're playing nice, relaxing music. And these here, that's the vibrasons. Oh, sorry, these are the vibrasons here. That's the Hona massage. Over here, we have the flotation tanks for detoxification and relaxation. And that vibrason has the mattress there vibrates, got different motors, and shut the top so it comes down like this. There's ionised air blowing onto the face to balance out the ions in the body. The sound has got your favourite music to relax. The chamber heats up like a sauna, so it's nice and warm. You can sweat or whatever. So we have these technologies in there, and then we have all the massage, like that's hona massage, it's wonderful. And then we'll have other different types of massage, masseurs and masseuses rotating through our communities with Japanese shiatsu, the Bowen technique from Australia, Swedish massage, the Vietnamese massage, all these different massages. And they'll be teaching our people how to do all the massages, reflexologies, another one we encourage everyone to learn. And then we have all the spa pools. All right, as you see there, everything's free, isn't it? It can be free. At $400 billion upfront payment, we don't even charge anyone to live there, right? So, and we're developing human capital. So we have the 5 zeros of sustainability: 0 debt, 0 poverty, 0 emissions, 0 waste, 0 crime. And we get 0 crime because we have what we call the link break technology. I won't go into it. We can permanently eliminate all types of mental disorders, from paranoid schizophrenia, paranoid psychosis, depression, suicidal tendencies in 45 minutes. People who are very, very super cruel, change them in 45 minutes. They don't go back to those cruel behaviours. And that's how we get the 0 crime. So the 4 factors of sustainability: the social sustainability, which is the key, right? Social sustainability, having the right families, getting the right marriage mates, building strong families, right? Strong, united families that never break up. And then happy communities where everybody's happy because everybody knows everybody in one of these compact communities. So then we have the cultural sustainability, the arts and crafts, the dance, like this little Maori girl here, or our Aboriginal brothers and sisters doing their traditional dance. And then we just have the concerts in the open areas, right? And ecological sustainability, working in harmony with nature, with the renewables, and the hot water systems, solar hot water systems, and that's the laser cut glass. That diverts the sunlight straight down the lifts, and then from the lifts diverts straight down into the corridors. We don't need the indoor lighting that we have here at the moment. And using the energy management systems to get costs down and the electricity consumption down. So economic sustainability is what we get from having no fossil fuels, no automobiles, no billion-dollar infrastructure costs, and all those different areas that I mentioned before. Everything is free, $400 billion upfront payments. And remember what I said at the beginning, for you big tech companies, if you're smart enough, you act quick enough, we're developing social capital, and we outsource the recruitment and training to Advanced Human Development Technologies Pty Limited specialists. Right, they be using a 3-lane economy website to screen out all the bad people and to bring in and educate the 6 to 16-year-olds and employ them at age 16. All right, so the 4 factors of sustainability: social, cultural, ecological, and economic. And that was designed by Professor Peter Newman. Number 1, the Wheel for Sustainability. But these ones here are more important. They're called the 5 zeros. 0 debt. 0 poverty. 0 emissions. 0 waste. 0 crime. And they're from me. All right, so there you go. And I'm nearly finished. Recruit at age 16. Already highly trained, bring them into Perth to give them more advanced training. And what we're doing here is we're following the Royal New Zealand Air Force recruitment systems, because 80% of the Royal New Zealand Air Force personnel when I served were age 16. Age 16, right? So, and we give them a lifetime cradle to grave employment and habitation contract from cradle to grave. When they have a little baby, we're there for them and we pay for everything. The bassinet, the food, everything will be paid for by the corporation. So how wonderful is that? To develop this wonderful social capital with our young people, follow our recruitment systems from the Royal New Zealand Air Force. They're graduates of the Happy Training curriculum. And our major focus is on find the major goal, 10-point plan, and the fast track 9 different areas of life in their lives for the next 12 months, setting the goals and keeping them on track. Also our profiling systems we have, and the lifetime cradle to grave employment contracts, and making sure that the communities function effectively, that everybody is happy within the community, using all the latest in the education, using VR, AR, and also hologram technologies to teach our global network of people, screening them out with the 3-lane economy, bringing in only decent, good-hearted people. If you bring the bad people in, you're going to need a police force. We don't need a police force because they're corrupt anyway. So with the zero crime rate, you don't need a police force. So it's the good social capital is what we're developing, and minimal work hours, right? All their physical needs are met, right? All the physical needs are met for our children. And remember what our vision is? Our vision is to create a happy future for our children, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, from all walks of life, without prejudice. So, fresh, nutrient-rich, organic foods they'll be eating for their physical condition. They'll have enjoyable clothing that they'll be wearing, that we buy for them, the corporation buys for them. And also supplying them super nutrition, right, for those who need to boost the immune system. So they'll have excellent health in our communities, and it's all debt-free. Don't worry about spelling mistake there. Peter Newman always pulls me up on my spelling mistakes. So there's no currency slaves, which is how you Americans have enslaved everyone with currencies. There are no currency slaves in our communities because no one has to pay for anything. So get rid of those darn currencies and the debt, which causes all the stress. And we meet all the security needs. Our people don't need insurance for life because they got a life with us, right? They don't need life insurance because we pay for the funeral and everything else. We look after their families from the moment they pass on. So get rid of all those, the security needs, the unsafe environments. We don't need locks on doors in a environment like this, right? You keep the tourists out, you keep the imposters out, which keeps out the drugs and the paedophiles and all the nasty people, right? You also prevent the spread of diseases by preventing the people coming into our communities. And with the zero crime rate also is created as a result of not bringing them in. So they're safe and secure environments. No insurance is needed for anything, really. So everyone has a sense of belonging. They belong to the family, they belong to the community. And 80% of the inhabitants will be aged under the age of 16. So decent, good-hearted people and happy, faithful marriages, strong families, all right? Strong, young, united families, beautiful, faithful as can be. They don't need to play around. All the community events as a community for everybody to enjoy, music and dance. You have all the competitions if you want. So everyone will have a high self-esteem, right? And they have self-awareness because they all know where they're going in life, don't they? So isn't that wonderful? And isn't that different from the communities that you live in today? 60-second review. Finally, I'm going to finish. Safe nations, sustainable cities and paradise. You see, the thing I like about Africa is they got all wildlife like these tigers, man, and they're wonderful. And we developed the social capital, right? That's our Maoris. This is my Maori people, and they're beautiful. It's our Aboriginal people, beautiful cultures. And lifetime cradle to grave employment, habitation contract, for our young people so they don't get mixed up, they don't end up with broken families, they don't end up with solo parent families, foster families, step families, gay families, gang families, grandparent families where they've handed the children up. That's not what we're building. That's what you Americans have built. It's not what we're building because we're Indigenous. So happy communities with all the latest technologies for educating our children. These, my friends, are the ultimate safe lifestyle destinations of the future. Very different. No fossil fuels, no automobiles, but in. Thank you for your time, and just remember our vision. to create a happy future for our children and for our children's children, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, from all walks of life without prejudice. Thank you for your time.